What's up guys, Rand Racer here with an unboxing and look at Apple's new 2020 11-inch iPad Pro. So I've been using the Apple 10.5-inch iPad Pro for approximately 3 years now, and although the tablet itself isn't like too out of date and it's still working fine, I do notice that the speed of it and the battery life is starting to diminish a little bit, so I figured now would be a good time to get the new iPad and sell this one while it still has some value to it. So for those of you who order your iPad Pro online, it's going to come with this beautiful UPS packaging here. And I also picked up a couple additional accessories, the Apple Pencil, as well as the iPad Smart Folio case. I do intend on getting Apple's new Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pro, but that won't be available until around May. And I also picked up a screen protector for the iPad Pro. This is for last year's model, but hopefully this should fit as the dimensions are the same, I hope. Alright, so let's check out the iPad first. We'll slice this open. So taking this out, the first thing that we get here is the iPad Pro retail box. You can see here we have a funky new colorful wallpaper for this year's box. The model that I picked up is the 11-inch iPad Pro with the Wi-Fi plus cellular. I don't intend on using data for my iPad anytime soon, but one advantage with the cellular model is that you get far more accurate GPS for Apple Maps and Google Maps. The new iPad Pros are available in 256, 512, and a 1TB model. I got the 512, but most people are probably fine with the 256 as it's a ton of space already. However, if you plan on uploading a lot of videos on here or just large files of any sort, you may want to consider a higher memory capacity. Alright, let's take the shrink wrap off, pull the top off, and the first thing that we're introduced with is the iPad Pro here. Moving this off to the side for a moment. Next in this little pouch here we have our Apple stickers, your SIM eject tool for those of you with the cellular model, quick start guide, and warranty information. And last but not least is your USB-C charger and your USB-C cable. And that is pretty much it. Apple doesn't really include a whole lot of extras with your brand new iPad. Here's a quick unboxing of some of the accessories for the iPad. First one here is the Apple Pencil. Not a needed accessory, but for those of you who plan on doing Photoshop, drawing pictures or whatever on the iPad, or even note-taking, this might be a nice accessory to have. First thing you get with the Apple Pencil is a quick start guide, as well as a really long, folded, lengthy warranty and legal information. And last but not least is the actual Apple Pencil 2 itself, which you can see is a bit of a departure from last year's model. You can see last year's model here was a little bit more elegant looking in my opinion. It was more pen-shaped than pencil-shaped. You have this nice chrome accent on the top here. Major difference between the two, aside from improved performance, is that this has wireless charging, whereas this one here connected with a lightning port. So that is the Apple Pencil 2, which has remained unchanged since last year's introduction. The last thing I want to unbox for you guys is the Apple iPad Smart Folio case. Unfortunately, Apple has no longer introduced a smart case or a Smart Folio flap, which they did for my older iPad, and no leather option either. But anyway, it only comes in a few different colors. You're very limited on colors for the Pro models with these accessories. But basically, as the title says, it is a Smart Folio. So it's not an actual case, but it's more of a front and back protection, which is pretty much it. So this is a black model, which is more like a super dark gray rather than black. You can see it has the Apple logo kind of stamped on the back here. The only major difference between this and last year's model is a larger cutout for the camera lens, but other than that, pretty much the same thing. You have the smart cover features. The entire back and front is lined with this soft microfiber lined material. And that's pretty much the features of this. It's not really much protection per se, but it does give you access to charge the Apple Pencil because it's not covered on the side here. But this is just temporary until I get a full-fledged case, such as the 360 Signature case from OtterBox. So one of the easiest ways to put on a screen protector for your brand new device is right when you get it, before you even place your finger on the glass display. So I'm going to go ahead and put the screen protector on first, as the easiest way to put it on is right when everything is brand new. Alright, got my screen protector installed. Very easy thanks to no fingerprints or anything on the actual display. A few bits of dust and debris here and there, which I removed with some 3M Scotch tape, but for the most part it looks like I did a pretty good job putting it on. This particular screen protector from Spigen, it's an okay screen protector. Love the oleophobic coating on it, but I'm not a big fan of how there's a cutout on the top there and the fact there's a good chunk of the edge exposed. But anyways, let's fire this up and power it on. Alright, so the new 2020 11-inch iPad Pro, what is new for this year? Well, as many of you have probably expected, the new iPad Pro for 2020 has largely remained unchanged. Since Apple revamped and redesigned the iPad last year, many of you have probably expected, as I do, that this year would only be a minor spec bump. The first major change with the new iPad is the innards, mainly with the processor and RAM. It features Apple's new A12, or an improved version of Apple's A12 processor, which basically in layman's terms means, like with every new iPad, this one's going to be a little bit more snappier and a little bit faster compared to last year's model. The biggest change in my opinion for the innards of the iPad has to be the increase in RAM from 4GB to 6GB, which means for those of you who use intensive applications such as video editing or rendering on the iPad to other applications like Photoshop, that having a larger capacity RAM would benefit the performance of using more intensive applications. While we're still on the back of the iPad, the second major quirk and feature with this iPad Pro has to be the camera. We still have our 12 megapixel standard wide angle camera, but the newest addition to this camera setup is of course the super wide angle 10 megapixel camera. After using the new iPhone 11 Pro for a number of months now, I do find the wide-angle camera a very useful feature to have for those of you in tight spaces who want to grab a larger picture of a space. And the third newest revision to the 2020 iPad Pro is this little sensor here, which you can see looks like a big black IR sensor of some kind. In short, it's Apple's new Lidar sensor. And basically what it does is it improves the augmented reality features of the iPad. Now for me, augmented reality on the new Apple devices really isn't a major feature for me. I never really used it. The closest thing I've ever used to augmented reality is the measuring app, which uses the Lidar scanner. And basically what the Lidar sensor does is that it automatically improves the sensing quality of using augmented reality. For example, the measuring app, you have to move your iPad or iPhone around a few times so the camera and the software can gauge the distance between you and a particular object. With this new Lidar sensor, using the measuring app as an example once again, you don't have to move your iPad or iPhone around to gauge the distance between you and the device of a particular object. It just does it automatically, which means it speeds up that augmented reality experience. So those are basically the new features of the 2020 iPad Pro. Like I mentioned before, it's pretty much a minor spec bump, and I did not really expect Apple to do anything revolutionary or even evolutionary with the new iPad Pro for 2020. We saw the same form factor, the same USB-C support on the bottom, 4 speakers, and of course this vibrant touchscreen display, which is almost edge-to-edge. The biggest excitement with the new iPad for this year isn't really with the iPad itself, but the introduction of the new Magic Keyboard that Apple plans to release in May. And the idea behind this is basically Apple trying to push the iPad into a potential MacBook laptop replacement. Fact of the matter is, ever since the iPad was introduced over 10 years ago, actually yeah, it was 10 years ago since it was released in 2010, it's quite clear that the apps for the iPad has evolved quite a bit. They're not just simple convenience applications anymore. You can do actual productivity work on your iPad. And with that in mind, because the iPad has improved so much in regards to the app department with what you can do on it, it's quite clear that you can actually use your iPad as a potential MacBook replacement. Now granted, it's not going to apply in all circumstances. macOS is still a full-fledged computer, and this is still a mobile operating system. But using a couple examples, if you just want to type up notes in class or just check email, Facebook, and do some minor things like a bit of editing on Photoshop, a lot of that stuff can be done on the iPad. Granted, it may not be as convenient as doing it on a MacBook where you have fully featured applications. For example, Photoshop is obviously going to be more fully featured on Mac OS than it is on the iPad, but it just shows that a lot of the applications and what you can do on the iPad can be replaced with the iPad versus using a MacBook. So with Apple trying to push a new accessory that basically turns your iPad into a potential laptop with a full-fledged keyboard as well as a trackpad with trackpad support, in other words, a little cursor on your iPad, it really demonstrates that Apple is trying to push the iPad into something that you could use instead of a MacBook or another laptop. Overall, guys, the new iPad for this year is certainly a nice upgrade from the 10.5-inch iPad I've been using for 3 years now. Love the new display on the new iPad Pro with the edge-to-edge support. I think the touch sensitivity is also improved on this one compared to this one, as this one seems to be a little bit more snappier with my touch responses. I actually do use the camera on the iPads quite frequently just for random pictures to send to friends and stuff. So the wide angle as well as the new 10 megapixel or 12 megapixel camera over this one here is also a nice improvement, although I do kind of wish Apple threw in the zoom-in camera that's on the iPhones into this one as well. The other thing I like about this iPad is the introduction of the USB-C port, which is a nice change from the Lightning port, which means I could actually charge this iPad with the same cord I use to charge my MacBook with. And also, for those of you wondering whether or not I miss Touch ID compared to the Face ID on the new iPads, I do prefer the Face ID a little bit more than the Touch IDs. This, you just look at it and it unlocks, where this you have to move your hand around and press the actual button. On top of that, because the button's actually gone, it makes it easier to clean your display, and it looks a little bit cleaner looking as well. In regards to any cons or concerns I have with Apple's new iPad Pro, first off, the price point is certainly a big con. The iPad Pro is a very expensive device. It does not get any cheaper every year. The 512 gigabyte cellular model that I have here retailed in Canada for around $1,500. I do plan on keeping this for around the same time period as I kept this one, in roughly 3 years. I don't expect Apple to do a whole lot with the iPad next year or the year following, but nonetheless, it does cost quite a pretty penny, and borderline on the cost of a new MacBook. In conclusion, guys, I'm pretty happy with Apple's new iPad Pro. It's a well-worthy upgrade from the 10.5-inch model that I've had for a number of years now, and so far I have been enjoying this new tablet. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Any questions or comments about Apple's new iPad Pro for this year, ask in the comment section there down below. Hit that like button, as always helps me out, and I'll see you all in the next video.